Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Brendan with Evoke Bike. So today we are going to talk about sweet spot. Had a couple questions come in, and I want to talk about why I think sweet spot is a waste of time for some athletes, and then also who should be using sweet spot. This athlete had actually come to me. We've been working maybe a little less than a year. He had just done a lot of sweet spot, had an online plan that had prescribed a lot of it, wasn't making as many gains as we thought he could. But he was newer, so that's one of the cyclists that's going to benefit from it, because if you're new to cycling and you're just riding, whatever you do, you're going to get faster. If you had asked me back then what would happen if I stopped doing sweet spot and threshold work, my FTP would drop and I'd lose the ability to hold big watts for a long time, or so I thought. Obviously, this hasn't really happened, but you don't give me any sweet spot type intervals that I can recall, only really targeted intervals, over-unders, VO2 max, and of course, as much zone 2 as we can do. I understand the benefits of big Z2 volume. You've explained that well. If you haven't seen that video, Google Y endurance or search in the YouTube box Y endurance. And I understand that working Z2 and supra threshold zones builds adaptation that bear positively on FTP. I also understand that FTP isn't the only thing out there. My ability to crush it on the open road clearly hasn't gone down, as evidenced by my performance at the fast group rides of late. How does this work? The intervals you assign can be really hard, but they're not super long, like 1 hour, and there seems to be a generous amount of recovery in between them. How come I haven't lost my big power over time? I'm actually really curious about this. We want to understand that FTP, when you zoom out, it's your how much lactate are you creating and how much can you clear. You start riding at, let's say your FTP is 300 watts. You're riding around 300 watts. You can do it, you can do it. You slowly start to feel some burn. You start to feel that thing on your back, and you're like, oh man, it's coming, and eventually you just can't pedal that hard anymore. So what is going on there though? You're creating lactate and you're clearing lactate. When the amount that you create becomes too high versus what you clear, then that's when you can no longer pedal. So why is it that this guy, even though he's not doing hour-long efforts all the time, when it comes to it in like a really hard group ride where he's at threshold for a really long time riding with faster people, or he also likes to do time trials, so if we send him out and do like a 1 hour TT, how can he perform?
So here are a couple examples of two of the over-unders. One I actually just call VO2 max via threshold burst. The other one is more directly called lactate clearance, which is what my coach Tom refers to them as. You're going over threshold to produce the lactate, and then you're going under threshold to work on clearing it, becoming more efficient at that. The studies show the best quote-unquote clearance for us is between 70 to 90% FTP. It's going to be impossible to know exactly what is right for you, but just, maybe start at 70%. If it seems too easy, bring it up a little bit to 80. I don't think you need to be riding around 90. Go longer as opposed to harder on those under portions.
So the only rider I kind of go on to talk to him about is the previous version of him that hasn't really trained that much. After that, you need more of an aerobic stimulus, VO2 max. You need to be riding, as he mentioned, supra threshold. Start with 4x8 minutes at 105%. Work that out. Can you do 3x15 at that? These 20-minute efforts that people do, you don't want to ride them at 100%. That's not going to make you faster. So really, the people that I think, and there's going to be people that would say, but wait a minute, I've done a lot of sweet spot and I've improved. Why do you hate sweet spot? The thing I don't like about sweet spot is it's marketed as, hey, want to improve lactate threshold, want to increase mitochondrial biogenesis, want to increase plasma volume, want to increase glycogen storage, just do sweet spot. It does everything. It's this magical panacea. And let's make a chart with arbitrary graphs or with arbitrary values, where if you look at that chart and you actually look at what it's telling you, it'll say that zone 2 and zone 6 work have the same training stimulus. We all know that's obviously not true. So this magical curve that's like, oh, sweet spot, that's the best thing. it's good for pushing out kilojoules. You know, I would say even in 5 blocks to racing, I'd put in like block 2 or 3, you know, do some low threshold work. The problem with it is you're really starting to increase your glycolytic rate much more than if you're riding endurance. The people that I think do well are the newer cyclists that have a hard time doing threshold intervals yet. They just aren't used to being consistent on the pedals. So instead of saying, hey, go, you know, bang 98 to 105%, do it at like 93, 94%. Get used to putting out power. This is the very new cyclist. You should graduate past that pretty quickly, a few months at most, 2 months maybe. I mean, and you don't want to do just sweet spot. It's not going to make you faster in the long run. Use all the other tools in your bag. It's not this one all does everything. 2 cases of athletes that I think could use sweet spot for your benefit. We have some athletes in Europe that do these crazy Gran Fondos. Maratona is one that comes to mind. I haven't looked closely at Alpenbrevet, but the profile is not like climbing, like we know it is mountain, mountain, mountain. I think that when you are simply climbing all day long, I wouldn't have the weekly training sessions be sweet spot, but I would have on the weekend a day where you're doing a mountain sim of climates at low threshold, 90, whoever, you know, sweet spot, it's not always the same percentage. Let's just say 90 to 95%. So high tempo to low threshold. Climb at that for 45 minutes. Rest 5-10 minutes. Do it again. Get a ton of time in it. But use it as a weekend ride. I would still be doing over-unders, or if I put a poll on YouTube, steady state or over-unders. I'll maybe do a separate post on which I think is better based off of the athletes I'm coaching and my own experience. Do an over-under and a steady state, and then this sweet spot ride on the weekend. It's gonna, why would you do that? That's gonna simulate the race that you're gonna go do. We always talk about race-specific training. Also, I had an athlete that went to Leadville, and one thing that we talked about is maybe, even though he did big rides, maybe incorporating some big chunks of this low threshold, because when you get to Leadville and you're climbing, it's a ton of tempo when you incorporate altitude if you don't live at 10,000 feet and train normally at 9 to 12,000 feet. So that's another athlete. And again, that's event specific. So I'm not against sweet spot. I'm not against low threshold. Every piece of riding has a place to fit in your training schedule. I'm against the repetitive nature of it, the overprescription of it, and the fact that people say that it can do everything by not really backing up the statements that they're making. So that's just why, I've gotten this reputation of Brendan hates sweet spot. I don't hate sweet spot. I just don't think you're using your time wisely, and people are making $49.99 off of you by selling you a plan that is only sweet spot. That is not right in my mind. But hey, I'm just another person on the internet putting content out. So that's my thought. That's who it's good for. That's who it's not good for. Keep getting faster. Good luck with your training. And don't forget to check out the blog. I'm going back in on the blog, and we also have a podcast. I'm really digging the podcast. Just different way of sharing stories of athletes that I think you can pull a pearl from, and trying to share some topics that might not be like a full blog topic or need a full video. And I think those are helpful too. So hit us up if you have questions, if we can help you out. See ya.